thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Absolutely Bookkeeping podcast. I'm joined today by Elspeth. Hello, Elspeth, and can you tell us a bit about yourself, your bookkeeping business, and the type of clients that you work with currently?
Hi, Natasha. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me on. My name's Elspeth. I have two hats, really. I run a small bookkeeping practice from sunny Somerset, ECB Bookkeeping. I've never really changed the name since I started it up. And then I also freelance for A2X, which is an app that helps you make sense of all your e-commerce accounting data and get it into your accounting system.
Brilliant. So how did you actually start your bookkeeping business? What made you start your bookkeeping, and how did the journey sort of start?
So, like a lot of bookkeepers, I think I probably came into it when my children were small. So I had actually lived in America in my early 20s and worked for a software company, and I loved it. But then I just couldn't, I knew I couldn't do having small children as well as it, 'cause it's quite intense. So when I moved back to the UK, I started doing part-time work at a structural engineering company, and they would get me to do admin. I did credit control, so I really enjoyed like chasing invoices because there's a lot of that in the construction business. And then they started to get me doing the VAT returns, and it was really good because the accountant was just down the hallway. And so I would do all the process. They had a whole process. I'd follow the process, and then the accountant would come and check it. And this was back in a long time ago. So it was, I just got the bug, and I thought, I just enjoyed it. And then we had to move because my partner at the time was moving for jobs, and the company said, well, do you want to keep doing this kind of remotely? But I realized I probably needed some qualifications to do that, but that it might be a really good work from home job. So I did the ICB qualifications, the first set, and I started taking on clients. And then that was when I got my first e-commerce client, who's an eBay seller. And again, he had PayPal, and I just, for whatever reason, just really enjoyed doing all that. Now, I made a bit of a mistake because then I had a few more children and life got really, really busy, and I had a little period where I wasn't very well. So I let my ICB license lapse. And so back in 2018, I really wanted to get back into it and, start my business up again. And I realized I was going to have to reset all the exams. So in 2018, I sat 7 exams in a row and got my license back. It was just massive at the time because I was doing that, like juggling the kids as well when they were smaller. But I got through it, and I actually think I'm probably a better bookkeeper because I think the new set of exams for ICB were actually harder and they covered more topics. So that was really probably a good thing for me at the end of the day. So started back up again September 2018. Again, was just ending up with e-commerce clients. There's something about e-commerce I like. I did have like a PR client and a few other bits and bobs, but really liked the e-commerce. And I was doing a lot of it manually. There was a couple of businesses I worked with that were family businesses, and they had an accountant who's like semi-retired, and he was just a real whiz, and he would meet with me once a week. So again, I just learned more about the e-commerce and got really into it. Then around 2019, I was on Upwork. So at the time, you could get a lot of good e-commerce clients on Upwork. And A2X reached out to me, and it was quite interesting because I'd already used a lot of their material. Although I wasn't using that software, I used a lot of their information around VAT transactions for Amazon and things like that. So they reached out and said, do you want to help with some onboarding for UK customers that have VAT registrations? So I said yes. And for me, that was really fun because it kind of fused that software from a long time ago with the bookkeeping. So it's kind of like perfect for me. And then, of course, the pandemic hit and we had like a quiet week. I lost a client, an e-commerce client, because what they were selling they thought wouldn't be relevant during the pandemic, and they just had to kind of consolidate. And then it just went mad because everybody was taking their shops online. We had somebody that was like selling their fish to their local community on Shopify and things like that. Yeah. So then it just massively ramped up. And so since then I've been doing bits and bobs of the bookkeeping. I'm not doing so much specific bookkeeping at the moment. I do more integrations, like helping people set up with Xero and Shopify and things like that if they need that. But yeah, I would say everything I do, apart from a little bit of treasurer work for a charity nearby, is
Yeah,
mostly e-commerce now. So long
brilliant.
story, but that's kind of how I got into it.
No, that's fabulous. Now, if you could use one word to describe your relationship with technology in your business at the moment, what word would that be?
I think it'd be curious, because
Yeah,
I do a bit like you, Natasha. I keep my eye on all the LinkedIn updates and people with good ideas.
yeah.
I've just seen one about using ChatGPT agents, so I'm going to have to go watch that later. So definitely curious, just try and keep an eye on what's out there, see if any of it would work for different workflows that I'm involved with.
Perfect. And I can verify that ChatGPT agent is absolutely mind-blowingly awesome. I've used it quite a bit recently. So let's talk about your favorite. What is the app or software you simply could not run your business without?
Okay, so I am going to say A2X for this, just because I am specific in that e-commerce niche, and it just saves so much time, basically, compared to I have done it manually in the past, for
Yeah.
different platforms and things, and it just basically just saves loads of time.
So how did you discover it? I know you said you slipped into sort of like e-commerce clients and you started using it. And so what was your discovery point? How did you find it? And was it a game changer from day one from using it? Or was it kind of a slow burner that you needed to work on it to get it how you wanted it to be?
So it was from Google at the time. So at the time, when you're doing the Amazon manually, so if you're trying to reconcile Amazon manually, there's all these transactions. They're really complicated. And
Yeah.
sometimes you want to know, what is that transaction, like miscellaneous adjustment, and you want to know what it really is. And so you start Googling, trying to find out, so that you make sure you're categorizing it correctly in Zero or whatever you're using.
Yeah.
And I was probably at that time, I think I still have some printouts, finding A2X articles. And I wasn't actually using the software, but I was using the information in some of the articles to correctly categorize those transactions for my clients. So I think that's how I came across them originally.
Okay, so what were the key problems it solved for you? Obviously, people have heard of A2X, they've seen it online, they know about e-commerce, but what were the key problems for you personally that it solved initially?
It was time and correct categorization of transactions. So if you've got a seller, if you're a bookkeeper, and a lot of bookkeepers will be familiar with this, say they're selling on eBay, you just see
Mhm.
this amount of money hitting the bank regularly, but
Yeah,
there's no unpacking of that number, and that number will be sales, fees, shipping revenue, holds, disputes. And in order to correctly account for it, so that they can correctly see on their P&L how profitable they were in that period, you have to
yeah,
break it all down into the correct accounting transactions, whether that be to the balance sheet or the P&L. So that takes time to do it properly. You do see sometimes people just reconcile it all to sales, but
yeah.
that will really skew the P&L, and the customer won't know, the client won't know whether they're profitable for that period, and there'll be issues with the VAT as well. So what it basically just did for me is allow me to automate that, so every eBay payout is categorized the way I want it to be categorized, and it gives me the transparency to see the transactions, and then it's just a green click back to the bank. So that's the very simple offering. So I think if you've got that issue and you've got that in your clients, then that's how it just saves you time, really.
So can you talk us through how you use it in your day-to-day workflow? Is it something that when you engage with a client, you make them aware that you will be using this software, or is it something that you identify with your clients, the kind of problems that they have with their e-commerce bookkeeping first?
I like to really listen to clients. So anytime I get on a call with a new customer that I haven't spoken to before, a new seller, and it's usually an
Yeah,
online seller, um, is I like to just listen for, like, I feel like people really want to talk about their businesses and their pain points, and they want to. So really listening to that gives you a lot of good information before you even start about what they need. So they'll probably tell you whether they're VAT registered, what scheme they're on. They'll tell you about the pain points with their inventory management, and just listening to all of that gives you a lot of information as a good starting place. Generally, if I was working with an e-commerce seller and they were selling on Shopify, Amazon, or eBay, I would say we need to use A2X, just purely because I know the difference between how much it would cost for my time to
yeah.
manually process it all compared to just using an app. So that would be part of the conversation, but I'd really listen first and just see, can I see ways that I can streamline this for them because I think the good thing about us as bookkeepers is because we do see a lot of different setups, we can look at something, we can say, oh, well, we know what worked for that other customer. So we do have a repeatable process often if we're working with similar types of clients.
Brilliant. Are there any clever automations that you set up with it to make your life easier, or clever things that A2X does that really make it so much easier to manage e-commerce clients?
Yeah, one thing I really like to do is some of these sellers, they will be selling all over the place. So they'll have eBay, maybe 3 different Shopify stores in different regions, and maybe they've got an Amazon shop as well. Yeah. So what I like to do from the start, and I feel like the sellers really like this, is say they're using Xero, and you can do this in QuickBooks as well, is there's an option to set up tracking categories in Xero. So you can set up a Amazon, Shopify Store 1, Shopify Store 2, Shopify Store 3 tracking category, and you can auto tag all the data from each store. Wow. So as it all goes through to Xero ready tagged, and that means they can run a mini P&L on, say, just eBay or just Shopify Store 1, and they can use that for their dashboards or see if, is eBay more profitable than Shopify? Yeah. And I find that surreal. They really like that as a kind of added feature.
No, that's fabulous. Has it helped you scale, save time, or even keep your sanity by using A2X?
It definitely helped with the scaling. So because you kind of got a repeatable process, it means the next time an Amazon person knocks on your door, you can say, oh, well, I know what to put in place to help them, at least the core stuff. There may be extra add-ons, but so definitely scaling.
Yeah, fabulous. Are there any common mistakes you've seen bookkeepers make when using A2X? Because obviously we all like to go and choose these bright, shiny softwares, but sometimes we don't actually do all the manuals, the check-ins, the actually fully understand what it's capable of. What common mistakes have you seen?
I have seen a little bit of overthinking happening with the setup sometimes. So we have this like onboarding flow, and it asks you questions like, where are you based? And if it detects you're based in the UK, it'll give you a UK VAT setup. And sometimes people avoid using that and do their own custom setup. And then it can get a bit confusing. Maybe they like use a liability account where they should have used a revenue account, things like that. So what I usually say, and I understand that because it's complicated, and as the bookkeeper, you're very conscientious, you want to get it right. So what I always say is use the onboarding flow just to get the basic setup. So you it's almost like a template. And then if you want to edit it from there, say you've got a custom account you want to use for Amazon fees or something, you can edit from there, but at least the base setup is correct for you. So a little bit of overthinking.
Okay. If you had a magic wand and you could change just one thing about A2X, what would you improve? Or is there nothing that you would improve?
I've actually got a list of things that I'm constantly campaigning for. The big one for me at the moment is there's quite a few EU people I've talked to. So they're actually based in the EU. So for the UK, we have this thing that's like auto mapping by country. That lets you automatically split your transactions by country without having to keep going in and checking it, which is really useful. We don't have it for people based in the EU yet. So I've got a little internal project going to try and get that rolled out because it will save them so much time, basically.
Perfect. Would you recommend A2X to every bookkeeper, or obviously we know that it's better for e-commerce clients, but those who have maybe just a simple stream of, say, like a PayPal stream for their business, there's not necessarily e-commerce, would you still recommend A2X for that kind of bookkeeper as well?
So there is a PayPal integration. I would say if it's very straightforward PayPal, and say you're using Xero, the Xero bank feed works really well if you've got a good workflow, like if you set up some bank rules for a while. But you may get to the point where they start doing multi-currency PayPal, or say they've got euros and pounds and USD in PayPal. And then definitely you want to be looking at an integration because it'll just save you loads of time.
Have you paired A2X with any other tools to supercharge it? Obviously, you've mentioned that it's absolutely fabulous with Xero. Is there any tools that you would suggest that A2X really works well with?
I think we have a lot of sellers who are slightly bigger. Maybe they're in the UK, and I've talked to quite a few sellers like this, and they maybe manufacture their own products, like they make gin, fancy gin, or they make something that they actually put together and put in a box and sell it to customers. They often might use Zero and A2X and Unleashed, which is an inventory management software. And that team, I've talked to some of them, they're great, really good at what they do. So I do see that quite often as an add-on.
Perfect. Now we're going to walk away kind of from A2X now. Apart from A2X, what are your other 3 top go-to apps in your tech stack?
Okay, so I'm going to assume ChatGPT. We're just going to say, because I'm just using it hourly. I think we all are now, maybe.
Yeah.
But experimenting with others. So we'll just put that one to one side. So my top 3 that I use every day would be Zero. So I've always been a big Zero person, just really like it. Secondly, I do use HubSpot a lot for tracking relationships. So sometimes if I talk to someone and then I don't hear from them again for 10 months, and then they come in on LinkedIn, or like if I'm in the middle of an onboarding and we've done 2 Shopify stores, but we've still got an Amazon, just keeping notes of where we're at. So I use that a lot. And the other one I'm really enjoying lately is Asana. For task management, and I used to use the list view, but I've been converted to the Kanban view, and I'm finding that really cool. Actually, I'm feeling productive using it.
How often do you review your tech stack? Is it when you find an issue, or is it periodically that you do that, or is it when we've been to Accountex and we come home, and do you review your tech stack before we go and when you come back? What's the frequency like for yourself?
It's not something I formally do, but I am, because I do go to the events, and then I try and keep my eye on LinkedIn of what people's posting, what are people using, or watch little YouTube videos. It's kind of quite organic, but I think I am trying things out regularly that are new and trying to stay ahead. I mean, this is so fast moving right now with AI, but just trying to stay ahead of everything, as I know you are as well, Natasha.
Yeah, we do. We just can't keep up with it sometimes.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a software disaster, kind of like a Frankenstein vibes, tech tantrums kind of thing? If so, what was it and how do you resolve it? Obviously, A2X has solved the e-commerce side, but have you any other tech problems, issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was in my earlier days, when I restarted in 2018, I got a couple of projects I took on, and they ended up being a bit albatrossy. So I had one where I was going to do a migration from, I think it was Sage 200 to Zero, and just start the accounts fresh in Zero, which I used to really enjoy, little migration projects like that. But it turned into this behemoth, trying to get the right reports out of Sage to start to get to a good starting place for Zero. On that particular, it was a kind of a legacy software, and I spent hours on the helpline, and I think that one did reduce me to tears. We got there in the end, but it took me probably 5 times the amount of time I thought it should have taken.
I think that things have quite evolved since then. Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you for a piece of advice now. What would be your advice for bookkeepers who feel overwhelmed by all the software choices out there currently?
Yeah, I think I heard somebody say this, and unfortunately, I can't remember who it was, but it may have been on one of your podcasts, Natasha, or on another podcast, but they said, treat your apps and your app stack as your team members.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. So if you've got apps that you like or you're interested in, if you can go and talk to the people at the apps and just get to know someone. And I think the questions to answer are, does this solve a real problem for me and my client? And then the second thing is, are these people going to be here if something goes wrong? So those are the 2 things I'd ask. Does it really solve a real world problem for my client? And number 2, if something goes wrong, are these people going to help me sort it out? And basically treat them as part of your team.
Yeah, I think that was part of my Accountex talk in London.
It probably was, yeah. It probably was.
Yes. Right, we're coming to the quickfire round now. So iPhone or Android?
Android.
Zero, QuickBooks or Sage?
Zero.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
What is the one piece of tech or business wisdom you wish you'd learnt from the start?
I think maybe a slightly longer answer. I think just mastering the P&L and the balance sheet.
Yeah.
And the reason is the real world application is one of the things I really enjoy about the ICB is they're kind of upskilling bookkeepers and just helping us to professionalize. And I think there's a lot you can add as value when you're using all these apps and getting all this really great data into your accounting system. If you can then figure out how to just show this in a way via the P&L and the balance sheet that really helps your client. So in e-commerce, it would be splitting Shopify revenue from eBay revenue and giving them that information. You're going next level and you're giving them data that they can make real business decisions on. So that would be my top tip, is just mastering some of that reporting information.
Fabulous. And my final question for you today, what is the app you think is underrated and deserves a little bit more love?
I think I'm going to go with HubDoc. I think you've had this before, but the reason is because I think for people that are maybe smaller and they don't want to pay for full receipt capture yet, it is a really good free solution if you're using Xero. And, you know, I've done Chinese suppliers and things like that on it, and it's been okay. So, yeah, I think I'll go with HubDoc for that one.
That's brilliant. Okay. And thank you very much. That was the end of the podcast today. And thank you very much for everybody joining us. So thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, Natasha. Thank you.